Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about that crazy machine that is sales. And we have a great person to talk to about that, Phil Johannet. Here it comes. Welcome back to another Future Tech video podcast. Today, we are going to talk about sales in technology, and I have a great guest with us today, Phil Johannet. I've known Phil for some time now, and if the topic of all-time greatest salespeople in the industry ever comes up, Phil's name is always at the top of the list. Phil brings a sensibility and intelligence to sales that is rare in the industry, and he's the perfect balance of getting things done and fun. And I'm super excited to talk with him today. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Chris. It's a great pleasure to be here. Appreciate the time today.
Awesome. And as usual, I have my partner in crime here, or partner in misdemeanors, Sandesh Patel.
Chris, today is an awesome day. So impressed you're here, man. I can't believe it. I'm excited. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm excited as well. So Phil, let's start off with the essentials. Tell me how you're doing. How's your family doing in the age of COVID? Everybody good?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Before I get started, I just want you to know that I'm here today as Phil Johannet, and in no way speaking for the organization or my employer. The views I'm expressing today are my own.
Oh boy, we're going to hear some crazy stuff then.
Yeah. So thanks for asking. We're doing great with COVID. First and foremost, me and my family have not been impacted like the many people that have lost their job and are, legitimately in a health crisis. So, the good karma goes out to all those people that are impacted, and we hope for that, if this does go to town, to our town, that it comes gently and leaves quickly. But having everybody home has been nice in a way. If this doesn't last forever, I'll actually think that we kind of found the good in COVID. We had some forced family fires and conversations and dinners that maybe we wouldn't have normally have happened. My two girls did get kind of summoned back from school. They both expected to go back, so they're mourning the loss of their second semester. My daughter was going to start an internship here in the fall that maybe won't happen. But for the Johannets, that's really the worst impact yet. So I think we've been incredibly lucky, and I hope that you guys have as well.
Yeah, we've had some issues in our family, but for the most part, my immediate family, my wife, my children, we're all doing really well and actually tolerating this pretty well. So I can't complain.
Hey, Chris, I don't want to make this personal if you don't want to, man. But I think the story that you have, I think is a good one. And if you're okay with sharing it, I think it's valuable.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's actually an important message, maybe. But my wife's aunt contracted COVID-19, and she ended up rushed to the hospital. She was, she was so ill when she got to the hospital, she had to be resuscitated. And they didn't know for sure what she had, but they said, this is in Detroit where they're much more resource constrained there. And they said that if she tests positive for COVID-19, they'll have to take the respirator away from her because she has so many comorbidity factors and underlying conditions. She tested positive for COVID-19. They took her respirator away to give to somebody else and put her into hospice to die, and she passed. And we had what was a really surreal experience. We did an online funeral, which it was great to see everybody, but it's just a very strange way to mourn somebody's passing in an online, in a Zoom conference call. It's a strange one. So the shortages are real, I guess is my point. And, make sure you take care of yourself and shelter in place.
And hey, we have a team member too. I don't know if you know this, Phil, but one of our team members, our architect on our team, has COVID-19 as well. He hasn't got tested yet because the doctor basically said just stay home. But, and this guy's probably one of the most fit guys on our team. And, he's telling me how much pain he's in, So what's interesting is my point is this, is is hitting people now personally, and I think when it starts to hit people personally, it starts coming into your home. It's like cancer, right? When cancer comes into your house, you really start to have an appreciation for it. And I think COVID-19 is kind of similar. It's like once you know someone that you love and you care about and they have it, that's when it starts to become super, super real. But thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Chris.
And Daniel,
Yeah.
no, and Daniel, I would say it's like, that guy is you can't put him down. I mean, he won't stop working no matter what. And the guy's out, and he's been out for a while. I mean, he's been laid up for, I haven't seen him or heard from him in, a week.
A week and a half.
That's like unheard of.
I know.
Yeah.
So,
Chris, yeah. I just want to deep condolences. I didn't realize that you had that level of impact, and sending sympathy your way.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Phil. I mean, and certainly there's a lot of people out there experiencing a lot of hard times. So,
yeah,
it's
I keep
it's the real deal. It's the real deal. Right. It is.
I keep on telling my kids that this is a great illustration for the need for hope, because as much as I want to get back next week or next month, I don't know. I don't think the world knows. And if you walk around with this growing sense of dread or anxiety, it's a tough place for you to live mentally. So I keep on, like, if you didn't have hope before, this is a great way to remind yourself to take an inventory of the blessings you have, because we got a lot to be thankful for.
Well, yeah, and I think the thing that's really important about it, especially in my case, is that the staying out of the healthcare system right now as much as possible is really important, because there is a shortage, especially in hotspot locations. So there's definitely a shortage of supplies and resources, and if you're not following the proper guidelines and doing what you're supposed to do, and you end up in the hospital and taking some of those resources, you're becoming a strain on the system, and you're potentially killing somebody by doing that. So don't do it.
As terrible as this is, for us, it's not been as bad as it could be. And, and that's like the guilt that I guess that I have, is that, man, we're working around it. My wife is working like crazy. Everyone's working like crazy. The house is a disaster. The kids are off of their routines. We're off of their routines. There's just there's so many weird dynamics, but at the same time, been enjoying some of those dynamics and trying to accept it and just deal with it. But then I feel guilty, because then I realize how many people have it so incredibly bad right now.
So this outbreak is just completely upended the economy, and the world is kind of ground to a halt here, Phil. You can't travel, you can't see clients, you can't take them out to dinner, you can't even shake their hand, right? And companies are faced with really major challenges here, and the first reaction was to get people working from home, right? And that's where they put all their resources initially. But what I'm seeing is sort of a secondary reaction now, is that they're unsure about the economy, so they're contracting. They're holding back to reserve cash, right? And that has really changed the dynamic of everything, and it seems like it's really changed sales in general. I mean, what are you seeing, out there around all this? I mean, how has it impacted sales in your world?
Yeah. So I think in my experience thus far, we haven't seen a negative impact in the current period, but that's not the way that the pain works in our business, right? So what happens is
right.
The metaphor is, I think we're landing all the planes that were in the air, right? The
right.
problem is we're not putting new planes in the air. So we're gonna run into this problem in 45 days or 90 days, whatever your company's gestation period is, but we're not planting right now, so we can't harvest later. And I think that's going to be the big dilemma. That's the thing that I think keeps me up at night, is thinking of that top of funnel and how things need to graduate down, and you need this to get to this. And I don't think there's been a lot of new net adds at the top of the funnel. That said, we have had some circumstances where customers want to front end load some purchases because of supply chain risk on the line. We've had other discretionary emergency funds open up that we benefited from. But when you unplug a third of the economy, it's really difficult to not be impacted. And I'm not sure I really have come to grips with how and when that impact's going to hit us, but I think there will be one.
So in that sense, I mean, in like considering, all the serious things we just talked about, what should the role of sales be? I mean, I thought it was interesting that when we had Sean O'Grady on, he said, he used the term, serve, don't sell right now. Right. But eventually you got to actually sell something at some point, right? But I mean, like, what's your perspective on what the role should be right now?
Yeah, I think maybe more than ever, this is a great way to really impart upon our coworkers and our clients and our prospects our humanity. Like, we care, right? I think that's something that often gets lost in what we do that is very important to many of us, right? Like this, there's a you will stop breathing someday, and the people that you meet and work with are important characters in your life. And I think if we demonstrate that we care, I mean, not even about ambulance chasing, like, we care about the people that are in this, we're kind of in this together, right? And so I think that's an important thing that we can do more of, which is run to the people side of the equation and just be there for each other through this process. And I think that has long-term great consequences when customers know the sincerity of your position, and that you actually have an attraction to them that's larger than the money that you pull out of them. It's not, it's not a vending machine, right?
Well, do you feel that, like, when customers, do you think this is a moment where, I think over the years it's gotten kind of adversarial between sales and customers, right? I mean, do you feel like, this is something that's going to bring people together and like, with sharing that common humanity, make people work together better or change the attitudes?
I hope so. I mean, I think that whenever, there's always there's always a story of redemption inside the tragedy, right? So I'm hoping that, that's the output. But I, being a little bit more cynical than that, am afraid that this might become the new normal. And one of the things that I know for certain, that all of us that are in this profession, you constrain the value that we can bring to each other if we can't see each other, right? If this becomes a remote transaction, then every party is going to lose tremendous value, right? Puts us on a leash that I don't want to be on. And one of the things that I don't want to see happen, to answer your question, is I don't want to see this become, a faceless business, right? Where basically you can't spend time with people because, everyone needs partners to be successful in their role in these companies. And, you got to choose wisely who's going to pack your parachute, and awful hard to do that on a Zoom or a conference call. I think that being there is an important part of it, and hard to develop relationships. And, there's no force greater in professional selling than, relationships with positive equity.
So, to that, everybody's talking about sort of new modes of selling and new modes of interaction. And, like, it's interesting that you put so much, and I think probably rightly so, you put so much weight into that, personal face-to-face, interaction. Right. But, we've seen a lot of stuff, and, Sundish, I know this is one of your things, the virtual happy hours and stuff like that people are doing. And like, is there value in that? And if and what are strategies that you can chase down to try to make things go?
Well, it's great and it's terrible. But the way I look at it is there's new rules, right? So my wife and I are doing these things, some for work, some for personal. But I think we're all learning, right? Like, the one thing I've learned for myself is I don't like the one when there's 20 people on there, that's not really my bag, like, I'll get on and just stay on mute, just to, like, listen if that's valuable. But I've learned that, to me, smaller and more intimate is better.
What are your thoughts, Phil?
Yeah, I concur with that. I think the way I feel about it is that bad breath is better than no breath, right? And so if this is the way, if this is the platform that we can use to unify us and bring us together, then that's better. But like, I was on a happy hour last night, and I've got a virtual dinner next week. And while I appreciate the connectivity of it all, it like the social dynamics of who goes first and how not to mow each other's lawn, that gets very difficult. All the jokes land late, unfortunately, right? So, I'm laughing at something and people are wondering why. And, so it definitely is weird. What I would say is the fewer passengers, the better. When you get like 10, 12, 20 people on this thing, how do you figure out, who goes?
Yeah.
But broadly speaking, like the not being able to meet with people, that's a big thing. I think I make a great third impression, right? So like being able to to be in the same room with people is an important, ingredient to being effective in our jobs.
I was going to say, it's an interesting point, like it's Sundish you made where you said, or Phil, you made too, where having all these people on the call just is totally non-productive. But the funny thing is like, it's totally not productive in person too. If you have 20 people around a table, you don't get to talk to all 20 people at once either. Right. So, I mean, I don't know why we're trying to cram more in now when it's harder.
Yeah. But you don't need to make 21 connections in person, but it's a lot easier to make 2.
No, exactly.
Right? Like, you're like 0.2 in the remote experience where like you can get intimacy, you can get to know somebody, learn about, a lot easier in my mind. Right. And it's more fluid. It's more natural. Right.
Well, so I've got a big challenge this weekend. So Saturday, we're going to be celebrating my wife's birthday, and we're going to be doing an online birthday celebration, which is, going to be crazy. And we're going to do it as a game night, because one of the things that's kind of cool is there's a lot of online games. So we're going to try to go that route. But it's hard. But, one of the things that I have noticed and what I've started doing is that I have this high quality camera and I have good microphone and stuff like that. And I find that when I use that and when I talk to people who have similarly good equipment and the quality of the interaction is a lot higher, it is eminently more engaging.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I mean, we're learning through this. We're trying to invent the way forward, right? So it's like a constant, how do we, reorder ourselves to take advantage of this? And I don't even say take advantage, to deal with the reality of this new global landscape in a way that, we still have a business to run, right? But the way that we transmit that has to change. One kind of idea that's come up that we've had a limited amount of success with is, we've done a lot of webinars and such, but we're trying to put DoorDash or Grubhub to the people that attend, right? Because then it feels like we're kind of having a community meal, and it feels very different than just the anonymity of the webinar. And you just better connection, right? Plus, you get to deal, you got to deal with the logistics of that, which is another connect. And I think we've had a limited amount of success with that. But again, the real concept right now is to put our obvious, commercial motives on the back burner and try to demonstrate that the relationship and the caring of people is what's most important to us right now.
Prior to the COVID outbreak, right, there'd been a steady decline in the culture of sales, I think. And Sundish, you talk about this a lot. And it seems that, year after year, the talent in the industry has sort of just been bleeding out of the industry, right? And at the same time, it's harder to make money. It's harder to hit your goals. It's just been a lot of, challenging headwinds in the industry. Do you think that culture that we used to have is gone for good? Will it come back? Is it even important? Is it just like, screw it? It's like, this is the new normal. We don't have to worry about culture anymore, right?
I think this is the most important and maybe relevant thing that we could talk about in our time together is the culture and how things have changed, right? And sometimes that's good and bad. I guess I'll find the hope in the beginning of the conversation that, a culture isn't a thing. You're the culture. I'm the culture. Sundish is the culture, right? So, we're just a collection of people, right? But I have noticed in my career that, at least for me, culture trumps everything, and it trumps it by a mile, right? I mean, generally speaking, you can find, an attractive employment opportunity, right? This is, the company I'm with now is not the only company in the space, and I think that's true for you guys as well, right? So, you choose to be here, and why do you choose to be here? And I think a lot of that has to do with, the relationships that you have and the way that the company, kind of the way that you both feel about, the shared values, right? And so I've had, over my term of my career, I've had a great experience with culture. I've had episodes where it hasn't been great, and those have really driven me to like totally triple down. I don't even want to double down. Like 99% of the wood behind the arrow for me is working with people that I know, like, and trust, right? And I can tell you that if you don't have that emotional safety, right, like as a concept, hard to do good work when you're looking over your shoulder, right? And I find that sometimes the tenor of some of these organizations and the hyper growth expectations undermine culture. And if you get the culture wrong, it's awful hard to operate a great business. I think that, because you're not attracting or retaining high integrity people with great values. I mean, you might be able to score a few points or get a touchdown in the current period, but hard to build a great company without great people. And I don't think there's anything more important to me than culture. In fact, I'm self-appointed chief cultural officer. That is my role.
That's a good role for you.
Yeah, that's my role. Like, people have me interview people. I'm like that. I'm just like, is this guy a jerk, or is this gal going to fit in, right? Like, because listen, it's not about talent. I mean, and it's certainly not about just you, right? And the people that don't get that, the people that have too short term of a scoreboard, they miss a lot of what's best about the ride along the way. Humble opinion. Love to know what you think.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's because it's not just about compensation and all those other things. I think the one thing that we've all learned is culture is the unfair advantage that you get as an organization, right? There are so many great examples, right? I think NetApp is a great example. I think Pure Storage is a great example. When you try to build a company for the long run and you build a great culture, things just go in your favor because everyone comes to work and they actually care. And if all the employees care, then the customers feel it. The customers feel like, man, this sales guy and this engineer, as weird as it is to wear burnt orange, his socks are burnt orange and he's got a handkerchief that's burnt orange, like that's all weird for sure. But at least he really cares about his company and he has that pride. I think that has been lacking. And I think we need to get better at it, honestly. I see more and more people leaving their organizations and, moving around. And, if you're just doing the job just to make money, man, that sucks. I would not want to be that person. I think we want to find the people that are doing the job because they want to do something really cool. They want to be a part of the things that we're trying to do here. And it turns out that is super hard to find.
Yeah. Well, so Phil, on that point, I mean, you're a guy who's hiring, you're managing a team of people. You know what I mean? Like, what is it you look for?
Number one thing, as we just already established, is culture fit, right? Making sure that they're going to be a positive, harmonious presence, right? Productivity is great. Disharmony is,
So what do you mean? What do you mean by? I mean, like a positive culture. Is that like you're looking to try to find people that just don't have that kind of negativity factor that
Amimi is the best example, right? Like, not mission oriented, all about them, right? Only will take out of it what they put into it. Those sorts of things, right? I think those are, you might call that like attitude over competency. Like, you could be amazing and awful at the same time. Right. And as a people leader,
right.
I have to administer the agenda of the company and hit the targets, but I want to enjoy the time in the middle. Culture fit's probably number one. Right. Obviously, competencies are important, especially in our business. It takes a certain level of domain expertise to advance the sale and to understand, how to enable the customer strategy. So I think you need to be not just intelligent, but you have to have emotional intelligence. I think if you can get a left brain, right brain player, that's usually a unique situation. And then, our goal is to really kind of get customers for a lifetime, right? So like, you got to do a lot of things that don't get you paid, but are important to help you building the franchise, right? And, you take a paycheck twice a month, right? A lot of the salespeople kind of are just only vectored on what's happening next. We have a responsibility to each other and to our clients to make sure that we're invested in their success. And it goes back to that selfishness or the attitude problems. I mean, people that, have that service leadership or servant leadership orientation.
I think you're kind of speaking to the sort of the essence of leadership. And I know, I can imagine you'd be a great mentor in that regard. Talk to me a little bit about like, what it means to be a leader and mentor people, and how do you put all that together?
I had so many people help me in so many ways, right, that it's not even funny. As far as mentoring, the reality is that at the present time, I don't have either a mentor or someone that I am mentoring, and that's usually a bad situation, right? I'll give you one insight here that I'd share is, in order for you to help someone, you actually have to like get invested with them. And that can be really difficult, right? Like, it's hard for you to help anyone if you don't know where they're weak or what their deficiencies are and how you can kind of like complement what they're doing. And so that takes a lot of time. And so I find that sometimes in the corporate setting, this idea of mentorship is like, it's like opening a can of Pringles. Like it doesn't, it's too immediate. You actually have to spend a lot of time with a mentor and being a mentor in order to, help them grow. And where I've had that, it's been great. I also think I was a pretty good one when I've been really engaged. Where I've been less good engaged is when I had like 3 and it was like a tick the box exercise.
Everybody's looking for shortcuts, right? And I think that's such a good insight that it's like, if you want a good outcome, you have to put the time and the effort in, right? And especially when you're dealing with the dynamics of people and personalities, and I gotta imagine it takes a lot of work, and different people are going to take a different amount too. I mean, because they have a different level of need, right? But I think that's an important piece. Sundays, you were going to say something.
I totally agree with what Phil's saying about mentors, right? You have these people that just, you look up to, and I think you need that in your career. But the other part is, I've been telling a lot of the younger guys, I think you need to spend time with people like Phil Johannet. Go invest in relationships and partnerships. Develop trust and integrity with these people, because you're going to be in this business for a long, long time, right?
We had this super world-renowned negotiator professor. He teaches at Harvard. His name's Dr. Deepak Malhotra. Come into one of our sales meetings in the past, and he said, "Hey," he was talking to the sales team. He goes, "Listen, guys, gals." He goes, "This isn't rocket science." He goes, "It's way harder." Right? Because you have to deal with the range of human emotion, and the human animal is a crazy, son of a bitch, right? So he's like, anticipating, how to navigate a people maze is unpredictable, right? So to your point, Chris, yeah, it's even harder than that when you think about, imagine trying to get your organization to be singularly directed at helping a customer that's got like a unique requirement, or like you really got to, not generally, but specifically vector in on them. Like that's an even harder thing. And I think that's one of the great testaments to effective sales professionals is they find a way to get their company aligned to their customer in unique ways, right? And when you can get that, I think you're cooking with gas.
Yeah, but I think it's a tough quality to find these days.
Yeah, well, navigating the internal is getting harder, right?
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Well, and I think we're in scary times, because I think the more desperate people get for a sale, the worse the behavior becomes, right? And I think you say there's a lot of people. I think it may be the majority of salespeople out there that are just more coin operated and not pursuing the best that they can do for the customer, but really just trying to get the sale. And I think that hurts everybody who's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, this goes back to that culture reality too. Like in a company that allows people to not contribute to the mission and to reach create value for the customer. You've seen organizations where there's a lot of like inside players, right? Who don't, move from function to function and never really impact, the customer experience. And good cultures, like I'm lucky. I got 3 people right now that I work for that I like all of them, and all of them are on the same page. And, and any one of them would get involved with the customer. And, for me, the other side of that coin is the culture game.
Yeah. Well, and so, but that's only half the equation, right? I mean, I think the other part of it too is sort of the partnership side of it, right? I mean, how the customer works with you, and how you're, for you, how the VAR works with you, or for us, how the OEM, the manufacturer works with us, and things like that. But it's like those partnerships, and how they come together are really, really important. And having the right kind of people on the other side of the equation makes an enormous difference. What are your thoughts on that?
Nobody does it alone. I mean, if you can't effectively work with partners, you're going to stifle your own potential in this business, and, those are complex relationships, by the way. They're like 500 level classes in nuance, right? They're not always easy, but if you can, for the people that navigate that well, there's no way any of us could do what we want to do alone, right? Like the key is you got to get the other people's oars in your boat so that moves faster. And if you can't align to that, and by the way, there's other, selling landscape challenges that come into that, things, procurement is a growing factor in the way that we transact with companies. And, that can be a very challenging set of conversations.
Yeah, and on that point with procurement, Do you think it's working, Phil?
I'm going to answer that question this way, which is that I recognize and appreciate the important role that procurement plays in the organization. I wish the order of events were different. Like, generally speaking, if you think of making a sale is like scoring a run in baseball, procurement's third base, right? And by that time, so much of the work is already done. So much of the value is already been imparted. And importantly, so much of the loyalty of the relationships have already been established, right? So the suggestion that on third base that I can go, back to the dugout and rethink my commercial strategy offends everybody's, go-to-market strategy. And so while I can appreciate what they need to get done, I wish there was a way for us to more, earlier engage such that those, third base kind of cardiac events, weren't as common.
Well, when I was on the customer side, and like we had Dave Krzyzewski on the other day, and he talked about, one of the things that's nice about procurement is that sometimes
he's a CIO.
He's a CIO. So one of the things that he says is nice about procurement is that sometimes IT people do get too close to the salespeople, and everybody kind of loses perspective in things. But I'll tell you, when I was more on the customer side and I was working with a procurement group, there was so much loss between, what we designed and what they would buy. And like, there was a certain nuance that, sometimes I push things to procurement, and in that process, the vendor would have like a different way to cut it. It's like, oh, instead of doing this, why don't we get this? It'll be half the price. But because now all of a sudden, everything's shifted to procurement and dealing with that, I lost all that opportunity. I lost all that value. And there was a really frustrating gap in the value chain when things went to procurement, that I just couldn't get myself around. Right. What do you do in those situations?
Yeah, right. If I could avoid the pain, I would. Yeah, some of that is not within our unilateral control. I think the earlier that you can identify those, all the key stakeholders across the whole process and get everybody in the bus early, I think that's your best bet. Or, early detection is your best chance of prevention. But I would say that lots of times those relationships go beautifully and smoothly, right? Other times we learn way too late in the game that like things like the economics are a larger variable in the decision factor than was shared with us, at the forefront. So having that insight earlier would have been key as well.
Like procurement does well in sort of more the commodity sales kind of perspective, where it's just like, let's get multiple bids and see what's cheapest and buy it, right? How do you bring them into the value chain early, though? I mean, do you have any strategies for, you say bring everybody to the table, early so that they all understand what's going on. But, it seems like procurement's just always sits on the outside. I mean, how do you bring them into the fold early enough so that, they understand what's going on?
Yeah. I think inclusion is the key thing there, right? I think that, to some degree, we have to set the expectation on what mutual engagement strategy we have, right? It's never just one-sided, right? Like we have to respect each other enough to play each other's golf course here, right? So, everyone has needs and wants and requirements in the relationship. It's important that both all three sides or four sides would, however many parties there are to the transaction. So I think getting them involved early is again the key. The other thing that works well, in my humble opinion, is, sometimes we do a poor job of articulating back the value that we've delivered. And if you think about what, at the moment, what I'm selling, right, which is actually what I've been selling for the bulk of my career, but it's data management. You wouldn't find a more durable good that lasts longer in the data center. I mean, this is a graybeard technology that lasts a long time. It's measured sometimes in decades, right? So sometimes we have to put the onus on us to talk about the past value delivered and about what we've done, over the term of our relationship to help them recognize the value that we bring. And, you get treated very, very differently when you start from a position where they recognize that the value that you're delivering and that you're a trusted business partner. Surprises are bad. That's, and to the degree that sometimes we can leave them out of the, our initial planning because we believe that that's like a third base kind of activity. I think, rethinking the inclusion early on helps.
So if you like what you saw, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and click on that bell to get updates. This is going to be a 2-parter. If you want to get notifications for part 2, click on that bell button, you'll get notified. And I will see you in the next video.